I mean, he wanted to talk about DeSantis. I really am so sick of talking about
I think the only thing that we really, I mean, the thing I think we really just need to address is that while it is the rest of the country's reward that they don't have to deal with him anymore, it's now our problem because now he's back in the governor's mansion and is going to take a much more interesting look into all the things going on in the legislative session. So what does that mean for us Floridians?
Yeah, what should we be looking forward to with that?
I mean, first of all, y'all are spot on. Like, you're welcome, America. You know, we helped to stop this guy from getting close to the White House. But my God, here in Florida, there is so much uncertainty. And I'm almost worried that he has more time on his hands, right, to be in Florida. There's two things a hurt dog does. They either whimper or they bite. And I think DeSantis is someone who's going to bite. And even just earlier this evening, I served as an ex officio committee member for a bill attacking trans people. And, you know, one would argue that this bill is basically, you know, from the governor's presidential ambitions, but it had a hearing and it passed. And the attacks on marginalized communities don't seem to be stopping. So despite the fact that DeSantis is failing as presidential bid, and of course, part of that is tied to his path to power exploiting marginalized people, doesn't seem to stop what's happening in the legislature. So I think it's important for us to take that victory lap, but then run back into the building, right, to keep fighting, because it's definitely not getting better here in the Sunshine State.
And we definitely have one major victory that we can hang our hat on. Women's reproductive freedom is on the ballot in November.
Well, wait. Did it get officially approved to get on? No, we got the signatures.
Correct. So we made the huge, you know, milestone of getting the verified petitions, which was still a big deal because that was 910,000 verified petitions within a time span of May to December. So it's still something to be proud of. But you're right, Jen. We have the February 7th oral arguments. And so we were preparing for that. And can watch those remotely online as well. And I encourage folks to do so. Basically, Ashley Moody is trying to challenge the language by saying that it's vague and unclear. The counter is that she's wrong. The language is incredibly clear. Wow. And so, you know, that is going to be the next fight in this effort. And I think it's a reflection of how Floridians are pushing back. You know, more than 150,000 Republicans signed that petition. Yeah. So, you know, we're going to do everything we can to get it through this next hurdle. But the momentum has been really, really inspirational. And I do want to give a shout out to Tom Keene over in District 35. That was another, you know, strong win we had. We worked really hard here in Orange County. Huge shout out to Congressman Maxwell Frost, our team, the local Democratic Party and Chair Samuel. I mean, we worked our butts off. We were knocking on doors in that district, doing vote by mail renewal during the primary months before, because despite, you know, having a primary, we were like, you know what, we can still do the work to get people ready to vote, regardless of who is the ultimate Dem on their ballot. And so that's a huge credit to so many different actors that came together to flip that seat. And I do hope that it's a sign of better things to come.
Okay, so on a sadder note, when I think about Florida's legislature, I've said it before, I think of like this small group of Democrats, like the resistance, right? Like it's sort of like, I think of Star Wars and you guys are like the resistance and there's few of you and you're mostly on defense. And I get that. Like it's and yet I do know, because and I've spoken with Robin Bartleman about this, but things do get through and get done. Like there are things that get done on the offense, but it's not the bigger issues that we're worried about. But this is something that concerns me, is that now I'm seeing Democrats, specifically my representative, putting forth that nonsense about anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, okay? And that's very concerning to me, because our Democrats in our Florida House are already fairly weakened as a constituent group. Right? Like you guys are small. So now to think that there's people within that group that are not on the same page is really upsetting to me. Can you please talk about that resolution and how that came about?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I think you're referencing the IRA definition, right? I assume, or is it something
else?
It
was whatever Gottlieb put forward about
It's defining anti-Semitism.
It's the thing.
Right.
It's the
House
Florida
Bill
version
House
of
Bill 187
of the federal one that our congresswoman put forth
to codify the definition of anti-Semitism.
Why are both of my representatives, both my state representative and my congressional representatives, are leading this nonsense?
Right. I mean, I think it's, it's a very challenging and emotional time, right? And so I empathize with all marginalized people and individuals that are that either they are targeted or feel targeted, because for me, both experiences are valuable, and I want to make sure that people are safe in Florida. Now, I would argue that Florida has a lot of work to do, not just when it comes to the LGBT plus community or communities of color, but also the Jewish community. We had white supremacists just on I-4 throwing banners down and, holding swastikas. And so Florida has a lot of work to do in combating all forms of hate, including anti-Semitism. And I actually want to give huge kudos to the Biden administration, because they've actually, back in May, they rolled out this one-of-a-kind historic guideline and plan and national strategy to combat anti-Semitism, which Florida has not adapted. Florida has not actually, looked at that to implement pieces of it. And so, the filing of House Bill 187 definitely caused concern. And myself and two others, we voted no on it in its first iteration because of these concerns. The interesting part about this, and I have done my homework because I really wanted to make sure I understood this, and I can also learn from all perspectives. So we brought in not just conversations with our Jewish-focused organizations and Jewish experts, but also organizations like Engage, organizations like Care Florida, organizations that center, diverse voices that do feel like the IRA definition censors First Amendment rights. And I want to actually provide some context to the conversation that took place behind the scenes on this, because I want to basically provide some comfort that feedback that we shared on these points, especially when it comes to legitimate criticism of Israel not being defined as anti-Semitism, which the IRA definition online actually says, but it's not on this bill. That feedback was well taken. And I'm actually really hopeful that the Senate version is going to be amended to include that really important additions. Another line from the IRA website that's not in the bill, by the way, is context. That the contemporary examples of anti-Semitism that are provided in the definition, the website actually says that these must be taken in context. And that's a really important piece of language that's not in the bill. So we're also hoping to get that added as well. So to your point, it's frustrating when bills get filed, and I think people are well-meaning. They're fighting for their communities, but they don't necessarily look at the bigger picture of some of the concerns. And this was a policy fight that also happened in 2019. It's happened since this definition became established, back in like 2016, 2017. But I want to provide some comfort that the Democratic caucus, we have been having some really, I would say, healthy, productive, and thoughtful dialogue on this. And I'm hopeful that the amendments that come from the Senate are going to reflect your concerns and that of many people who've contacted our office who are worried about First Amendment violations, and are also honestly worried about how this is not going to actually stop anti-Semitism. At the end of the day, it's
making it worse. It's making it worse. And to be clear, and to be very clear, and I not only need, like, the idea of provisions, yes, and I understand context. I do not understand why my tax dollars, and we are talking state, so no MMT people coming after me, is what my representative is doing with his time, is defining something that doesn't need to be defined. So this entire thing is a waste of time and resources. It's offensive. It's anti-Semitic, quite honestly. And the fact that that's what they're doing and is going on there, when there is so much stuff that needs to get done, that's the problem. So I sure hope that their language isn't a complete violation of my First Amendment rights, but make no mistake, this is not what you people need to be doing with your time.
And I hear that. I mean, especially when we have things like property insurance and Florida actually is one of the worst states when it comes to reporting hate crimes in general. Yeah. So I filed legislation during the last special session to put requirements on hate crime data reporting, because the reality is that we don't even have good data on whether it's anti-Semitism or anti-LGBTQ plus or racial or gender. We are not actually collecting this data, so we don't even have a good perspective on how frequent hate crimes are. And I want to stress again that even online, the IRA website and even on ADL National's own website, they make it very clear that this is a definition that is meant to be used as a guideline, but not one that should replace current legal standards and guidelines. So even online, it makes that clear. But again, I do want to, at the very least, provide the comfort that conversations have been incredibly productive.
Good.
I don't want to fall into like dem on dem violence. You know what I mean? Like, we've had enough of that in Florida over the years and in Congress. And so, as someone who, is absolutely like much more intentional on some of these issues, I have been welcome. My feedback has been really well received. And I do feel grateful for that, because I know in other places of legislators, that's not the case, right? People get pushed out or ignored. Yeah. But, we've actually had some really good conversations, and I feel very hopeful and confident that the final version is going to alleviate different concerns. That's only because of your activism and sharing your concerns, and of course the willingness of the bill sponsor and others to work together to figure this out. And
I'd be happy to talk to the bill sponsor. I don't think he'd come on our show.
I mean, you definitely should. Yeah, I mean, definitely, extend the invitation, write the email. I mean, I feel like the Democratic caucus in Florida, I can only speak to us, like we try really hard to find the areas where we agree, and where we disagree, we try not to have it impact how we fight together on other issues.
Right.
And let me tell you, I had the same struggle on corporate issues, right? Like, I see Democratic colleagues for voting with corporations, and I'm just like, like pulling my hair out, But to your point, Jen, there's only 36 of us. So part of me is like, okay, I'm gonna talk to you about my concerns. I'm gonna be really expressive and direct and share that with you.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to be strategic in, what fights are going to be relevant today compared to the one we have to prepare for tomorrow. So I try to be really thoughtful in that.
And that's why you're so good at what you do. That's why you're good at what you do. But just know that people like my state rep do not speak for all Jews. And that there is, and I know that you probably have interactions with Jewish Voice for Peace and that organization. Yeah. And that I'm thankful that those groups, and I feel like I'm always very proud to say I'm associated with Jewish Voice for Peace, because I feel like I'm just thankful that even exists now.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And as you know,
thank you for advocating for peace as well. That's so important.
Yeah. And as you know, women's right to choose, as well as Israel, unfortunately, are two extreme lightning rod issues, and they probably always will be. The good news is that I do think that there is a unification issue in this state, and that, of course, is cost of living, specifically property insurance, taxes, and so on. Now that the governor is back, and we'll see if he even cares about this state. I doubt he does. But let's just see if there's anything that can be done. What is being done right now, because Tom Keene actually was on our show a few days before the election, which was great. And he mentioned that the two biggest issues that he was campaigning on that was receiving the most amount of support was women's bodily autonomy and property insurance. So is there anything that's being done in committees right now? And is there considerable crossover with the GOP to get something done for the state?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, you're 100% correct that struggles around class and income and cost of living transcend political lines, transcend cultural lines, and are a priority for every Floridian in this state. And the reality is that Republicans have made some of these situations worse, including property insurance, by supporting legislation that was purely written to benefit the industry leaders and not constituents. So with that said, more than 20, if not 30 bills have been filed intersecting property insurance from different, sides of the political aisle. Of course, one of my favorites are the ones that have actually attracted bipartisan interest and I want to give a big shout out to Representative Spencer Roach. He's Republican from Fort Myers. So he was.
Oh, normally that is not my friend.
Wait for this. Wait for this. He's basically filed a public option, private insurance bill, and it's actually prime code. Yeah. So it's prime code by Representative Hillary Cassell. So it basically would create.
We like Hillary.
So like, stay with me here. Stay with me here.
Combination, because I'm pretty sure Roach has been one of our bootlickers in the past.
I mean, crisis makes interesting bedfellows, right?
It does.
And I'm co-sponsoring this bill too, so it's very interesting. But remember, Representative Roach comes from Fort Myers, and he was directly impacted by the hurricanes. He actually lost power. He lost so much, and so he's actually been one of our stronger voices in challenging the insurance industry. And so this is a bill that the insurance industry hates, but it basically creates a public option under citizens for wind damage. Because the reality is that that's the most expensive part of your property insurance.
Right.
Also the most profitable for many insurance companies. So by providing an alternative just for that type of coverage, so you still purchase the rest of your coverage from a private company, but they're basically he's proposing to take away the highest risk option and back it by the state. Okay. So you can still get that coverage that you need, but then it spreads the risk because you'll have people purchasing it who live in different parts of the state. So not every one of us are as high risk as a Fort Myers or a South Florida. So it really is designed to mitigate the impact of, insolvency, right? Because you're not going to have everyone apply at the same time for reimbursements or for coverage. And the private sector can still provide all the other options, but it's not mandated, by the way, it's just an option for people to have. And so it's pretty innovative. It's something that most Republicans will not support, but I was very happy to see that. And, again, one of those examples of how the economic issues can drive forces together, even folks who are historically, very much not aligned.
No, and it's good. And I'm glad to see that people are doing that at the state level, because I feel like at the federal level, they are just so tribal that it's almost impossible for those things to happen. It's so frustrating, but I appreciate that you guys are able to do that. I mean, and that's in all reality, that's how it's supposed to be. Like it shouldn't, Absolutely. It's not supposed to be so difficult, and it's made difficult by corporate money and egos. And it's so frustrating because I feel like, do you ever want to just be like the grown-up in the room? I feel like, and you don't have kids yet, right?
No, I do not.
Right. But it's like, there's always that moment when someone has to be the grown-up. And I feel like there are so many times that I look at people in legislation and I'm like, what is wrong with you?
The sad reality is that Anna's the biggest adult in the room, a room full of adults that are old enough to be your parents.
Eskamani 26. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.